to support our mental health throughout. So with that, I'm just curious, especially given the state of our collective lives right now, if you're comfortable, could you share a word or two in our chat just to share how you've been feeling since the holidays wrapped up, since 2020 kicked off? How have you been emotionally, physically? Share anything you're comfortable with in the chat. Love all of these words. I think it's important to see a wide variety and to hold space and honor the maybe feelings that feel more challenging and those of us who really feel this fresh start energy. I think both are really valid. Man, I can relate to so many of these. Yeah, I see a lot of nods. Other people are with you guys too. Thank you so much for sharing some of those. I think above all, what we're learning right now is that this time just calls for grace and gentleness towards ourselves. But there is a way to set intentions and goals that hold space for that grace and gentleness. The two can totally go hand in hand. Could I just see if your video's on, you can show me a little hand, or you can send a yes in the chat if your video is not on. How many of you are like goal junkies like me? Like you love setting goals. You get super motivated by New Year's. Okay, a couple of people. Yes, a few people. Love it. I think that's my Enneagram type 3 coming out. I love my goals. Yes. Okay. How many of you get super stressed out or frustrated or like annoyed by the whole goals, New Year's resolution conversation? Okay. Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, there's going to be space for all of you here because we're not here to like change our whole life because it's a new year. We are here to learn how to support our mental health. And then I'm going to help you set a sort of balanced goal around that so that hopefully 2022 really can be like your year to reconnect with yourself and reclaim control over your health. So if you haven't opened up that workbook yet, I encourage you to do so. We are going to jump on in to some specifics around our food and mental health. You might not have heard a lot about nutrition and mental health before, but they actually go hand in hand, which makes a ton of sense if you think about it. Stress and mental health are just intimately impacted by all of our body systems. And the food that we eat or don't eat impacts all of those body systems. So you might have heard before that like stress, anxiety, depression, it all comes down to neurotransmitters. Has anyone heard that before? Neurotransmitter deficiency or imbalance. Yeah. Like serotonin. Okay, we've all heard this. And neurotransmitters play a huge role in our mental health for sure. But this neurotransmitter like deficiency theory is very simplistic. And this whole chemical imbalance conversation has been pretty much discredited at this point. Mental health is much more complex than simply adding more of a neurotransmitter and like fixing the problem, which is why medications for mental health have a wide range of effectiveness for different people because it's a really complicated system that runs our body. So I'm guessing most of you are here for some solutions. And it's just really important to know that those messages we've been getting for often years or decades are just really oversimplified. And there is a lot in our diet and lifestyle that can impact our mental health. So bottom line, your stress is a hormonal response. So you're going to hear me talk a lot tonight about hormonal health and how to support that because it is really tied in. So before I get into the details, I want to direct you to the first interactive page in your workbook. If you have it up, you can meet me there. If you don't have it up, that's fine. You can check out my screen. We're going to do a really quick mental health check-in. You can put a little check mark next to any of these phrases that feel like they apply to you. Try not to overthink it. Just think about the last few weeks or months of your life. And I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to reflect on that page. Yes, if you joined a little bit late, I will drop the workbook in the chat again. There's a little PDF in the chat now. As you finish up that page, if you had any insights or reactions or things that surprised you or things confirmed for you, feel free to share a couple things in the chat. This is a safe space, and it's often helpful to see other people's experience in this.
I wanted to say, instead of writing, like, these are like so many normal things in like the human condition, and especially going through a pandemic. But when I look at it, it's the amount that it happens, like insomnia. Look at how much is the insomnia, like how often, how much does this dominate your time and your energy? That's kind of, when I look at it, I think about that. Like,
yeah, I think that's such a good point, Luann. Thank you for sharing that. And we have, I think, especially women navigating the health space, but really everyone has been conditioned to think so many things are like normal that really aren't. It's not normal to be stressed all of the time, or to never be able to sleep, or to always feel exhausted. And these things a lot of us accept because that's all we've ever known. And so I think really questioning where that energy and time is going is important. Awesome. We'll use this page to kind of see where you might want to focus your goals. If you're someone who maybe needs more sort of energy and motivation and focus, or you really need to sort of center and work on your anxiety, see sort of where your patterns are on this page. So I want to share a little bit of how the nutrients in food work here. This is a really super simple breakdown on the screen of how this is all connected to each other. So the food that we eat is at the bottom. So all of your nutrients and foods go into creating, forming, and helping them interact your hormones and neurotransmitters. If you're missing a nutrient, a really important nutrient, that's going to impact the way your hormones and neurotransmitters are created and how they function. In turn, those hormones and neurotransmitters all interplay together, communicating to manage our moods and our stress and our mental health. So as you can see, the nutrients that go into it are truly the building blocks for everything else, which is why if you have gaps in your nutrient intake, you may be feeling that in your mental health. And if you're having mental health struggles, you can target that by really focusing on some key nutrients. Now, there are some cracks in this foundation that happen. So before I get into what to do, I just want to point out some common cracks that might be causing some issues in how we feel day to day. These are the most common on the screen. There are lots of other potential causes or concerns, but this is the most common. We're not going to go into all of these super in depth. I will talk about a couple, but I think it's really helpful to see and notice like what could be at play here for you in your health history and in the current place that you're at. I am going to dive into blood sugar and stress and nutrient deficiencies a little bit deeper. Before I move on, though, are there any of the other ones on that list you want me to touch on quickly? You can send it in a chat or you can unmute and let me know.
The thyroid imbalance.
Yeah, thyroid issues are very, very common, particularly in women. Particularly low thyroid or hypothyroid is going to impact our mental health and our stress management. Those hormones are all just connected together, and the thyroid is actually in charge of producing many hormones. So you can imagine if the thyroid is low or struggling, you're going to be missing key hormones that you need to manage your mental health and your moods and energy and things like that. Another thing to note is that a lot of antidepressants actually suppress the thyroid even more. So if you're someone with an already low thyroid, that might be one reason that you try an antidepressant and it doesn't work for you, even though it worked for someone else, that your thyroid could be at play there. Any others before I move on?
Can you talk a little bit about the adrenals? It's funny because really, they're not spoken about much, eh? Like the adrenal glands. And even a lot of people don't even know where their adrenals are. Like no one talks about that, eh? Do you find it's sort of interesting?
Absolutely. I love me some adrenals. Yes, Luann. And I could probably do an entire class on adrenals and how to support them because they are small but mighty. But your adrenal glands are located in your throat. They're these little butterfly glands in there. And they are also producing hormones, particularly stress response hormones. And so if you're living in a constant state of stress or fight or flight, your adrenals are going to work overtime to produce enough hormones for that response. It's going to think you're constantly in danger, which will eventually tax your adrenals to the point where they can't do their job. And adrenals are crucial for energy, for moods, for stress management, anxiety, all of those things. So if you ever suspect, yes, thank you, Kristen, down on your kidneys. I misspoke. I was thinking of the thyroid in your throat. Thank you. They are down in your kidneys. If you suspect an adrenal issue, managing stress, and there are some dietary things you can do to support that as well. Both adrenals and thyroid can really benefit from getting some, like focused testing done so you can really figure out what the issue is. But stress management is going to be key for that. Beautiful. Okay, let's jump into some blood sugar. Blood sugar is a really common culprit for anxiety, depression, stress, constant feelings of stress, and exhaustion. And unfortunately, blood sugar issues are really common in our society. So thinking of mental health, there's a few things that happen with blood sugar. First of all, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, actually kills our neurons. So those neurons that are so important for keeping our neurotransmitters going, keeping all of our brain, functions and focus, are getting killed off by low blood sugar. Several studies have also linked unstable blood sugar, so lots of highs and lows, and insulin resistance to increased chances of depression. So one thing that's really important to note is that blood sugar is really closely impacted by food and your food habits, but it's also impacted by stress. So even if you're eating great, if you are constantly stressed and your adrenals are pumping out that cortisol, that's going to impact your blood sugar as well. So it's always going to be a two-pronged approach with diet and with lifestyle. It's really difficult to focus on just one. So let's talk about that stress just a little bit more.
Can I just ask, can I ask you, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but is blood sugar triglycerides? Triglycerides
are actually more closely linked to your cholesterol. And I see a request to talk about that in the chat. So let's actually pause before we do stress and talk about cholesterol real quick. Cholesterol has to do with the sort of like fatty compounds that are circulating in our blood, including triglycerides are one of those fats in our system. And low cholesterol specifically is often linked to anxiety, which is often caused by low fat diets. If you are eating a primarily low fat diet, you probably have cholesterol that is too low. High cholesterol, which is often caused by a really inflammatory diet. So like think processed foods, like really, the sort of trans fats, things like that. That's where you would see higher triglycerides, Luann, and that's actually linked closer to depression. Of course, this isn't black or white, one or the other always, but that's what we've seen in studies. So either way, imbalanced cholesterol is going to impact our mental health, which makes sense. So much of our brain is made of fat, and we need those healthy fats in balance to work correctly. Yeah, great questions. Okay, let's dive into that stress. So when cortisol is being, pumped out by your adrenals, that's actually going to increase our serotonin needs. So when our cortisol is high, our body's going to need serotonin to match. And eventually our serotonin can't keep up. So we end up with low serotonin, which we probably all understand is going to lead to feelings of being really down and blue and depressed. Cortisol also interacts with all of these other neurotransmitters, which affects emotions and memory and decision-making. So cortisol is so important. But when it's out of balance, when we're constantly stressed, that's when we're going to start seeing issues. The trouble here is that, like, if we look at blood sugar, if it's imbalanced, is going to cause stress, right? It's going to cause our body to go into a stressful state. And when we're in a stressful state from something else, that's also going to cause imbalanced blood sugar. So it's all connected in this big cycle, which is why it's really important to be aware of where your triggers are, both in food and in your lifestyle. We kind of have to look at both. And then the last one I want to dive into before we start getting into our action tips are nutrient deficiencies. When we talk through food, they're going to target most of these nutrients that you see on the screen. These are the most critical nutrients for our hormones, for our healthy stress response from our adrenals, and for our mental health, our neurotransmitter production and interaction. So the foods that you see are going to all hit a couple of these main nutrients in really significant amounts, which is one of the reasons that they'll be listed as one of our power foods, we're going to call them, that are going to really support mental health. Any of these that you want an explanation on or more information on before I move on, any of these nutrients? Beautiful. Okay, so those are some things that could go wrong. Let's talk about what to do instead. These are sort of the basic foundations of what an eating for mental health diet needs to look like. Number one, we need to get enough protein. Protein is key for keeping our blood sugar stable, which we saw plays a key role in our stress response. Protein is all made up of amino acids, and amino acids are also the building blocks for building all these hormones and neurotransmitters. So if we're not eating enough protein, we're going to have a hard time even keeping our hormones and neurotransmitters in balance because we simply won't have the building blocks necessary to keep them going. The other key thing about protein is that variety is really important. Certain proteins contain certain amino acids that others do not. So if you're rotating between the same, 1, 2, 3 sources of protein, you might be missing key amino acids that are only found in other places. And so while it's not helpful to track every single thing you eat, it is helpful to think about variety throughout the week of animal sources, plant sources, and sort of different protein sources through there to keep your amino acids balanced. Number 2 is going to be healthy fats. Healthy fats, not only do they support our fatty brain, but they also help with blood sugar. Fats are going to be really slow to digest and they keep your blood sugar more stable. Low-fat diets are highly linked to depression. We're missing key nutrients in a low-fat diet that are so important to mood stabilization, energy, things like that. I do want to note that the quality of fat really matters here. So I'm a huge fat fan, but not all fats are created equal. So if it's animal-based, just go with the highest quality you can afford. If you can, do the grass-fed, like dairy. Organic often has higher nutrient contents, but think about what the animal was able to eat during their life. And the closer to natural diet the animal had, the higher quality fat you're going to get on the other end. Other than animal fats, great options include like avocado, coconut, olives, nuts, seeds, pastured eggs, that sort of thing are all incredible nutrient-dense sources. Okay, and then the last basic that we're going to cover is our gut health. The gut is actually called the second brain. Has anyone heard that before? The gut is our second brain. It's down in our stomach, but it is a whole, we're learning so much about the gut microbiome. It is a whole nervous system down there, just housed in our gut, that is constantly talking to our brain. And like all these neurotransmitters, if they exist outside the brain, they're probably in our gut. So gut health is intimately tied to mental health. And I have worked with so many people that are not able to balance out their mental health the way they want until they can like really heal their gut. So this one requires some love and some patience. But like everything else, if everything else in your life is perfect, but your gut is still imbalanced, it can still cause you to feel stressed and anxious. It's that important. So One thing that can play a role here are food sensitivities, which of course is really individual and different for everybody, but it is really important to be mindful as you eat and be curious as you start experiencing symptoms to see if there's any patterns, to see if there's any foods that maybe you're not digesting or absorbing well. There's a big difference between a sensitivity and an allergy. Sensitivities can be really subtle, but can still sort of build over time to have a big impact. So the common ones we hear about are like gluten, dairy, eggs are pretty common, soy, things like that. But there's a whole range of foods you can be sensitive to that could be impacting you. So we're going to go into some specific foods now. If there are any questions about those basics, throw them in the chat and I'll be sure to hit those up. But I want to supply you with 10, I'm calling them power foods because they are powerful. These are the foods that are going to cover all of these bases we've been talking about, that list of nutrient deficiencies. Most of these foods are very high in either protein or fat and are going to be really nourishing for our hormones and our neurotransmitters. One thing I want to note as we go in, our proteins and fats are going to be the focus of this list. That's not because carbs are the enemy or that you shouldn't be eating them. I will say most people are eating far too many of them, but we should not be afraid of our carbs, especially fruits and vegetables and healthy whole grains. They can play a really important role in our diet, especially if you're a woman of reproductive age. I do not want you to avoid all carbs. They are important. The thing we want to avoid is refined, sort of empty carbohydrates coming from a package, the white flour, sugar. Those are going to be the most impactful. Or if you notice that your meals throughout the day are primarily carbohydrates, even whole foods ones, that is still going to throw you out of whack. So just focusing on your proteins and fats and treating carbs as your sort of side dish is really going to make a big difference in your blood sugar and then in your mental health from there. So I'm going to list a couple benefits for these foods just to help you fall in love with them as I do. This is not a complete profile of each food, but just a little note of why they really help. So eggs are really high in vitamin D, which is key for mood stabilization. Also, those healthy omega-3 fats we talked about. Eggs are something, if you can buy the sort of pastured ones, those are going to be the most nutrient dense. They found a huge difference in nutrient content between conventional eggs and the ones that were from pastured chickens. Salmon, also very high in omega-3 fats and that protein and fat for your blood sugar. Pumpkin seeds, very high in your omega-3 fats as well. They're also really high in magnesium, which is incredible for your hormonal health and for, especially if you're a little bit more on the stress anxiety spectrum of things. Pumpkin seeds can be great to add in. Flax seeds, really nourishing for our gut health, also high in omega-3 fats and in some key B vitamins that are important for our neurotransmitters. And the last one on this page are walnuts. Walnuts are like a brain superfood. They even look like a little brain if you look at the nut itself. Very, very high in healthy fats and in those B vitamins as well. I'm going to flip to one more page to show you my last group of power foods. Leafy green vegetables. So we're thinking like kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, spinach, those sorts of things. Also incredible for your gut health, very high in that magnesium, lots of antioxidants to help with our hormonal health, inflammation that gets in the way, that sort of thing. Bone broth is very, very healing for our gut. It's also high in a lot of amino acids that I mentioned that are hard to find anywhere else. So if you can get some bone broth in, you're going to cover more of your amino acid bases, which will in turn help your hormonal balance overall. Chocolate, you're welcome. Very, very high in antioxidants. There's one in particular called L-phenylalanine. I always get the L's all flipped around. But that's a chemical that's actually been shown to induce these sort of relaxed, happy feelings in the brain. And is very, very high in magnesium, especially we're thinking like high quality dark chocolate. So do like as high percentages you can enjoy it, but I'm at least 60. If you can do like 80, that's even better to get the benefits. Dark meat turkey is one that maybe some of us aren't utilizing the way we could, but it is very high in a couple key amino acids that our brain needs. If you've ever heard of tryptophan, tryptophan. That's one that's thrown around a little bit. Turkey is a really great source. And then last but not least, down at the bottom says fermented foods. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi, full fat yogurt, kombucha, kefir, things like that are all excellent options to support and to heal our gut. So I just threw a lot of foods at you. We're going to take a quick pause and go back to our workbook for a second. You scroll down past your little mental health page. You see a page that says personal reflections and asks you these 2 questions. You should have a space there to type. If you're not using your workbook, you can just reflect on your own or jot it down on a piece of paper. All 10 of those power foods are up on the screen on the left. So think about where you're already doing awesome work for yourself, and then pick like 1, 2, maybe 3 that you know you could focus on increasing next. Are there any of these power foods that you have questions about or that you need ideas for before we move on? Yeah, go ahead, Luann. I think you're still on mute. There you go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, all of these foods are great to me and I eat them, and I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat the turkey and all that, but you know, these are good. I just want to ask you, like, you know, if you think about a regular day, say I were to eat just like I'll eat my regular food, but say I included a half a cup of walnuts and 1 hard-boiled egg. Is that, from your opinion, enough protein for a day? Is that a bit too low?
Just those 2 sources, if that was all the protein you were eating?
Yeah, I was just curious. Like, I think I get more than that. I mean, I
eat
all these, you know, but I just like, I just was thinking about that because like I have protein smoothies with protein mix. I have pure Greek oikos, no sugar yogurt. That is protein too, you know, but I'm just saying if I had an egg and a half a cup of walnuts, is that enough protein for a person?
Yeah. That would not be enough protein, and it can be tricky without the meat sources. It's doable, but you do have to be intentional to get enough. A lot of us need more than we think, especially if you're struggling with any of these stress, anxiety, you know, mental health concerns. Protein is going to be your best friend. So I would say keep increasing as much as you can. You're going to see a difference.
Eat more of it. Okay. I just, you know, I see so much our society. I find we eat too much. I think everybody eats too much. Yeah. So we make the point of, well, yeah, but look at eating too much of the good stuff like protein. Not probably we eat too much. Maybe, I don't know of the bad stuff. Just we have these big, like these portions that are ridiculous man-sized portions. Like who should eat that much? But you're saying in certain things, eat more of. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Yep. Great. Okay. Salmon. If you can do sardines are another really great option. Cold water fish in general is going to have a similar profile. Like high quality tuna would also be a great choice. Those sorts of things. If you cannot do the fish, another option is sort of algae based things. So think like spirulina powder is one you can buy, sneak into your smoothies and get some of the similar things. I know some people either are vegetarian or are not fish lovers and they really struggle to get it in. So sometimes those algae powders, spirulina is one, or chlorella is another that could be a good choice. Great question.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, we're going to move on. Continue with that power food sort of in the back of your mind, which one you think you might be able to tackle this year. I do want to talk for a couple minutes about the things that might be sabotaging you. So specific things in your diet that are really going to work against you And if you're in a place where you really want to support your mental health, these are the things I would avoid at all costs. Now, this is not a never list. Of course, we all need to live our lives and feel balanced. Feeling deprived is never going to help your mental health when it comes to food. But these are the first things I would look at reducing if mental health is something that you're struggling with. So refined carbohydrates really impact your blood sugar in a negative way. It's going to set you on that, up and down roller coaster, and put your body into a stress state automatically. In addition, refined carbohydrates will deplete certain nutrients because your body has to work to rebalance everything afterwards. They really sort of leave you with like a negative balance by the end of the process of metabolizing them. Now, gluten, some people tolerate much, much better than others. I do not think it's, universally bad or universally needs to be eliminated. Specifically for anxiety, gluten has been seen to have a link. Gluten sort of intolerance, struggle digesting has been linked to anxiety disorders or high anxiety humans. So if you're in that camp, I would just encourage you to experiment. Don't do anything extreme, but just give yourself a month. Give yourself a few weeks, give yourself 3 months, see what you can do without it, and just see if it makes a difference for you, because for some people it really can trigger a digestive response that then trickles down into inflammation, anxiety, and stress. Aspartame and the sort of artificial sweeteners actually mess with our neurotransmitters directly. And so that's one I feel really strongly, if you can avoid those sort of diet drinks, sugar-free, artificially, sweetened things, can make a really big difference in balancing our neurotransmitters. Trans fats, there's really no safe level for. Our bodies do not know what to do with them. And they're going to cause those triglycerides we talked about earlier, cholesterol concerns, all sorts of things. So these are the sort of like damaged vegetable oils. So things like sunflower, canola oil, safflower, all those seed oils that you often see in packaged foods, avoid if you can. They're going to be really inflammatory for your body. Diana, stevia is not an artificial sweetener, since it does come directly from a leaf and has not been shown to mess with our neurotransmitters. So that one is safe. Some people experience a little bit of digestive distress if they have too much, but it's not going to mess with our microbiome the same way. So that one I feel totally fine about. And Vivian, I will go right back to protein powders. Do not let me forget. Alcohol, we all know, is a neurotoxin and is probably not helping our mental health in the long run. When we have to detoxify that alcohol, it is going to impact our hormonal levels and lead to too many hormones in our body, which also messes with our neurotransmitters, inflammation. We can't detox things the way we need to because we're focused, our liver's always going to prioritize the alcohol getting out of our system. So especially in times of high stress or of really like sort of low energy, no motivation, lethargic, things like that, would definitely avoid alcohol if you can. Anything you're sensitive to, we talked about just being aware, trying to figure out what you can do. And then meat and dairy, when I say conventional, I mean the sort of like factory farm, non-organic options. Even if they are foods that I'm recommending, like turkey or eggs, if they've been exposed to those synthetic hormones, pesticides, chemicals, heavy metals, things like that, that all depletes our nutrients and it does interfere with our hormones and neurotransmitters. So again, just go with the highest quality that you can find. Yes, Sharon, avocado oil is one of those healthy options. So that one is not a seed oil. The ones I would recommend would be olive oil, avocado oil, butter, particularly grass-fed butter is fantastic. It's really the like canola oil, sunflower, safflower, peanut, all of those other seed oils. Great question. There was a question about protein powder as well, since we're talking about increasing amino acids and proteins. Not all protein powders are created equal, but they can be, if they're high quality, can be a really excellent way to get a little more protein in. So I would say always read the label. If the label is like a foot long, keep moving. You don't need that many ingredients in a protein powder. I would say the two best options that I know of would be high quality whey protein or collagen-based proteins are both really excellent as far as their amino acid spread and how well we're able to digest the protein. So those are the two I'd recommend. And if you can find some with like stevia instead of like other strain sugars, that would be best. Okay, so here's your saboteur list. It is up on the screen. You have one more page for this one. I believe you might have to skip a page to scroll down. They got a little out of order. But if you scroll down to one more page down in your workbook, it will ask you a question about saboteurs. I'm going to give you just a moment to reflect on your own. Which ones are you already doing a great job staying away from? And what is one that you know in your soul that you should probably focus on decreasing next? If you feel so moved, throw your saboteur in the chat. Which one are you ready to tackle? See what solidarity you can find. You are not alone, guys. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and Luann, that can also help with blood sugar as well. So I'll be curious to see how you feel a difference if you work through that. Vivian, that's another really great question because we talk a lot about refined sugar and processed sugar, but there are natural sweeteners like honey and the stevia we mentioned, maple syrup, things like that are unprocessed. What I would say is that they do not impact our neurotransmitters in the same negative way. What they do is they do still impact our blood sugar pretty significantly. So I think with those, it's all about balance and moderation. And if you already know your blood sugar is a concern, then just be aware that those things are still impacting that, which we know will in turn impact your mental health. Great. Love all these saboteurs in the chat. All right, we're going to talk about strategies for how to do it in just a sec. The last two things I want to touch on are some supplements. Now, I put these last for a reason. Food is always going to be the best foundation for healing and for nourishing our bodies. But supplements can be a really helpful tool, especially if you're in a healing phase, to give yourself that extra boost that you need. Now, I can't make any specific recommendations without knowing your special situation and your health history. I do work with one-on-one clients, so if you're wanting more guidance, hit me up or talk to your healthcare provider about some of these options. But these are some that I'm commonly recommending and helping people with, specifically with anxiety, stress, feeling depleted, depression, that sort of thing. Are there any of these that you want me to talk about a little more before we move on? Yeah, topical magnesium creams or Epsom salts, things like that can be really effective. We absorb those really great. Magnesium is one that you can absorb through the skin, so great choice. Yeah, okay, adaptogenic herbs. This is a class of herbs that are really incredible for stress management. They're called adaptogens because they help the body adapt to stressors. They're very supportive for our thyroid and adrenals that we talked about, and they're amazing for hormonal health. So one of my favorites for stress is ashwagandha. It's up on the screen. Yes, if you've heard of like medicinal mushrooms, so things like reishi or chaga, those fall under that category of adaptogenic herbs. But they can be an amazing tool, especially if you're in a fight or flight state a lot of the time, to consume every single day in tea or as a coffee substitute, things like that can be great. Magnesium, if you are so for anxiety, I would recommend, I'm going to type it in the chat for you. It's called magnesium glycinate. That is the form that I'd look for. That's the most effective for anxiety. Or if you prefer topical, Epsom salts and things like that can also be great. Awesome. Okay. And then honorable mentions. Again, I could do an entire class about lifestyle support for stress management and mental health. I think a lot of us have probably heard a lot of these strategies before, but we can't leave a class on mental health without talking about just being mindful, taking your deep breaths, that sort of stress management tools that we hear about. Movement every day is an incredible stress management tool. Reducing overall toxins. So I'm thinking like personal care products, cleaning products, toxins in your water, things like that. Those all build up to a cumulative effect and they're all hormone disruptors. And so they're really going to play a role here as well. And then just your own sort of personal journey and work with body image, with your relationship to food in your body, which for many of us is a lifetime journey. But coming to a place where you can enter this space with grace and kindness for yourself is also super, super important. You can drink Epsom salts. Yes, you can dissolve it in water. And cramps. So if it's like period cramps, like PMSing, I would actually say magnesium citrate would be the best. That one is usually most effective for like muscle relaxation. Magnesium citrate is a good one. So with that, I'm actually going to skip that page for the sake of time. We had really great questions, which I love, but I want to make sure that we have some time here before we leave to talk through those goals that I mentioned at the beginning. So before we sort of wrap up our mental health summary of like what we're going to take with us moving forward, I want to talk to you about some do's and don'ts about setting that goal. Specifically, some things that I see in the health and wellness space right now that I feel really passionately about. First of all, as you're looking forward right now to setting your goal, you need to do some reflecting about what exactly your why is. For many of us in this class, it's probably going to be around feeling like ourselves day to day, right? Not feeling stressed or anxious or frazzled, but really getting specific about what you do want to feel is going to be really important to keep you driving. I would say today, let's really focus on setting goals around the process, not the end result. So what I mean by that is think about goals that you can set that are actionable in your control. So I am going to eat salmon once a week. That is in your control. Rather than I am going to be less stressed. Ultimately, actions can build into that, but you can't flip a switch to turn, to just make yourself less stressed. If we could, we wouldn't be in this call. So really focus on the actions. Let the end result sort of blossom the way it's going to with the power of those actions. And then I have some important mindsets there on the screen. Even the saboteurs I mentioned, we are not here to demonize any food or to add sort of like guilt or weight to the foods that we choose to enjoy. Even with those saboteurs, you know now what they might do to your mental health. And now you can make an informed decision. Is that food worth it or not? And sometimes it is. And sometimes it's not. And so just coming in that mindset of food is just food, and you are empowered to make the choices that you want to make for your health. Foods that do make you feel physically or emotionally crummy really don't deserve a regular place on your plate anyway. So I'm going to leave these mindsets up on the screen. And I want to leave us with just a moment to fill out your goals page that's in your workbook. So the 3 questions are about what you will add this year. So this could be a power food that you want to add in, or a lifestyle practice, or a supplement that you know will help. something you want to reduce, so potentially a saboteur or one of those foundation cracks that you know you want to tackle. And if you have the space, jot down your why. What is driving you? What brought you to this class in the first place? What do you want to be true of yourself this time next year when it comes to your health and your wellness? So I'll give you just a moment to process that. If you feel moved, I would love to either see in the chat or hear a couple people share out any intentions they're setting around their mental health and specifically their food this year moving forward, things you want to add or reduce.
Like about this eating at night, I'm thinking I could try popcorn instead. Like I hear you can make popcorn, like I make it more exciting. Like once I tried it with some hot sauce and I love that. So like popcorn's pretty tame, you know, like it's not that high calorie and it's fine, right? You know?
I love the idea of like mixing up your flavors, making them exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And with any sort of higher carbohydrate snack like popcorn, which it can absolutely be a great snack, I would just really be liberal with your high quality butter on that so that you can balance your blood sugar just a little bit more. Because if you're eating it on its own, you could get that spike, that high glycemic index.
Oh, okay.
But if you throw some butter in, that can even help to keep things more balanced.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Not.
If you can bear it.
I know. I just want to let you know I love butter.
Yes, you have my full support for the butter. I love the idea of flourishing foods that fuel the flourish. Beautiful. Well, I hope you're walking away with a couple of reflections that you can take with you into the year, things that aren't overwhelming, but can pack a really big punch in the way that your hormones and neurotransmitters are able to support you in your beautiful life. So before we wrap up, I do want to just throw in, I love continuing to connect with you all, and I'm going to throw a quick link in the chat for my email newsletter. This is something I send out about once a week with all kinds of free nutrition advice on different topics, specifically hormonal health. So if you would like to keep in touch about future workshops and get that free weekly sort of deep dive advice, you can click on the link in the chat and just sign up right there. And then there's also lots of ways to find me online. I do teach classes through Banyan, so keep an eye on their schedule. I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle's up on the screen. I would love for you to find me. And then if you are interested in talking more deeply one-on-one, if you have health struggles you want more direct support with, there is a link up on the screen. I can also throw it in the chat where you can schedule a time with me to chat more about that. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Christina, I do know that the class was being recorded. I believe that the recording will be sent out in an email after the class. Jamie, correct me if that's incorrect, but I believe that's how it works.
We will put the email, let me fix that. We will put the recording because have you taught this class before?
I taught a version of it before. This one was slightly different.
Okay, so yeah, I just recorded it just because I'm not, we don't put all of our recordings up on our online learning, but we do put many of them up. So if it will get posted, it'll be there
Great.
on our
So we
online portion of our website, banyanwomen.org. Or you can go to our YouTube channel. So if there aren't any other questions. Oh, yeah, just people saying thank you. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today. Thank you, Martina, for the excellent presentation. I just want to remind you all that Banyan Tree Women's Collective is a nonprofit. We are still new. We started in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. So we've been around for just a little over a year. And so please spread the word about what we're doing, what we're teaching. Check out our other classes. We have, usually I have my app up. Let me see. We have herbs for a natural detox coming up on January 26th. We have yoga nidra, which is like a meditation type yoga. We have cook-alongs coming up in February, as well as we run Pilates every Wednesday. And then we have in-person classes as well that we are teaching in the Bay Area. So please go to our website, check out our events, share with your friends. If you have the means to donate, please do. Otherwise, spread the word. That's very important for us. And also, if you do shop on Amazon, I like to promote this because it's the easiest way to support us. You can shop on Amazon Smile and choose Banyan Tree Women's Collective, located in Menlo Park, as your organization of choice. And then every time you buy, you will support, like, just, it's a tiny little percentage, but every little bit counts. I love to see, you know, even just what I'm supporting every time I get my Amazon packages, which is a little bit of an addiction.
The last thing I'll say, y'all, is that in your follow-up email, you should be getting a handout that has a few of the key, like the list of power foods and saboteurs and things like that. So if you can't find a recording, but you just need that sort of quick list, make sure you check your email here in a couple of days, and that should be in there. Yeah, that's a really nice guide to have. I definitely learned some things today. I am super into carbs because I'm pregnant, and I probably shouldn't be eating as much. But they just taste so good right now. So yeah, I probably need to work on the noodles, and my husband was listening too. And we decided we need to go buy some kale. I used to make a really awesome coastal kale salad. We're gonna try and do that again. So little changes. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night, day. It's different times everywhere. So have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, maybe Thursday. And we will see you in our next class. Thank you, Martina, so much. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.